Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series. Hey guys, it's Adam here, and as I'm sure you're painfully aware of at this point, I recently took a trip out to Japan. Specifically, I went to Osaka. Now, I very rarely left Osaka, but I did go up to Kyoto twice. And the reason for that is I had a buddy out there who we will refer to by the name James for the purposes of the video. He didn't really want his identity involved, but he lives there, he speaks Japanese, and he was like, hey man, you know, you want to hang out? I'll take you to game stores, and I'll take you to places you couldn't usually function in because you don't speak Japanese. And I was like, yeah, of course, it sounds great. So went up to Kyoto on the train, and so I got just a little bit of footage of Kyoto, like here at night. I wasn't really thinking to film stuff. Kyoto is a really nice city. It's actually very, very pleasant. I should have got more footage of it. But while we were up there, we went to this ramen restaurant. Oh, this place was insane. Like this place is famous in Japanese television and stuff for being like the best ramen place. But we also went to game stores. This was one of them, Surugaya Specialty Store. It's not necessarily a game store, it's just a store with a games section. This was the one and only store that I had permission to film in, and that's because James was with me and he was able to ask the guy. They were also not very busy, so I think that's part of the reason that the guy let me. But yeah, so I was able to take a little bit more time, but at the same time, it's still kind of awkward trying to film this much stuff. But yeah, there's a lot more time to focus on things. Look at this. A Dreamcast broadband adapter. That translates to roughly 90 bucks. For a boxed one, that's a pretty good deal. I didn't pick it up because I already have one, but I was like, wow, shit, somebody's going to want to have seen that. This place was not, it was kind of in between Kyoto and Osaka, so we're in kind of like a more rural area. A place where someone like me really could not function because I don't speak Japanese. So obviously having James with me was amazing. But yeah, they had all sorts of cool stuff in this place. As you can see, Xbox section right there. You saw a bunch of other things, like there was some Mega Drive back there, PlayStation stuff. They had a lot of collector's sets and things like that, newer releases, and PlayStation 4 stuff, a lot of that stuff there. A lot of box sets, a lot of collector's editions, as you can see lined up there. Prices in this place were really good, especially compared to Osaka, which makes perfect sense. You know, the tourists aren't coming to this store because they can't get to it. They don't know where it is. They can't function in it, etc., etc. This store was funny because this was this place was so new to credit cards that I was when I paid for my stuff, which you'll see my pickups at the end of the video. This was the first time that the guy had ever used the credit card machine, and my credit card kept getting rejected, but not because of us. It was actually the guy didn't know how to punch it in correctly. Long story short, we actually spent more time having the guy figure out how to use a credit card than we did to shop and get the footage combined. It was pretty funny, but ultimately we got it to work. And no, I wasn't charged like $1,000 because of repeat transactions or anything. It was just one of those things. The guy just didn't know what to do, but eventually we got through it. Yeah, look at all this PS1 stuff. Look at this, a Dreamcast. That's $6. $6 for a Dreamcast. Man, I wanted to get that, but there was no space. Famicoms down there, I think those were like $10 or something like that. AV Famicom in the box, Famicom, Super Famicom in the box. I don't care about the Pokemon stuff, but that right there, that's about $90 for a boxed Japanese Pokemon Edition N64, which I'm sure a lot of you just went, fuck, I want that. Because that's a good fucking deal, man. Famicom cartridges, Game Boy cartridges, Famicom Disk System, loose Game Gear, and some Sg-1000 in there. Game Boy Advance, Super Famicom, Mega Drive, Famicom Disk System. I think I might have already said that. Then bins down there with like the commons for the Super Famicom. Just tons and tons of stuff. Then there's like the rare case variant stuff. There was Metal Gear for the MSX, which I know was like insanely expensive. And then they had these two Super Mario games in there, which I'll show you a picture of near the end of this footage because it was insane. But we'll talk about it then. A Hori controller for the GameCube, which was like $60. Just so much stuff, man, that you would kill for, but it's like, dude, you have to factor in space. But this was the first store that I went to, because I knew I was only coming to this store once, so this was the one and only time I could buy anything. I couldn't like come back here, unlike all the stuff in Osaka. So this is the first store I went kind of nuts in, where I was like, all right, I'm just gonna get this, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get this. Neo Geo hardware, all sorts of things, portable stuff. We got DS things. The only reason you're seeing cuts like this is because every once in a while a person would come around the corner, and I was like, oh, I better stop, because I didn't want to bother people. Like, it was okay that I had the store's permission, but I didn't necessarily have people's permission. That's about $150 for, maybe a little less, for the Turbo Duo. There's a Sega Pico there. Yeah, it was maybe more like $145. Wii U, Wii, but yeah, it was absolutely nuts, man. So anyway, so this photo here, you can see those two games, they say like Super Mario or whatever, they're obviously spelled wrong. Those are insanely expensive, and what they are is actually like pornographic Mario games. They're extraordinarily rare, but that's all the information I had, because that's all James knew about them. So I don't know much beyond that. If you guys know, please feel free to share in the comments. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at pickups. So that was Surugaya Specialty Shop in somewhere between Osaka and Kyoto. Sorry, I'm not exactly sure where. So first of all, again, I want to thank James for taking me out there and showing me around and really helping me find a lot of games for stuff I needed, and especially for a lot cheaper. That was really nice of him to do, especially because he could help me with translations and all that stuff. So that was awesome. So he had actually advised me, I had picked up a PCFX. A couple of videos ago I showed it. It's a console that was only released in Japan. And he advised that I just kind of wait and not buy them in Den Town, the games, because he said they're much more expensive there, and he was right. Like, I had kind of looked at the only couple of places that had them, and they weren't exactly pleasing. So we went to this store, and that was the highest priority. It was like, let's find some PCFX games. And they had a bunch, but they were generally, I wouldn't say expensive. They were much cheaper than Den Town, but there was nothing, they weren't like, oh shit, making it rain like games if they're cheap, you know, like that wasn't really a thing. So what I decided was, like, I'm not going to buy any that are over $5. So that would be this column right here. So I'll just read these titles off to you as best I can. This is Welcome to Pia Carrot, P-I-A. This is one of the games that came in like a jewel case. In case it's not obvious, it's a disc-based console. Yeah, this is majority of games did not come in jewel cases, which is really too bad, because obviously these bigger cases that you can see here take up much more real estate. Most games came out like this. This is something special. Not something special, but fuck, you get what I'm saying. They're bigger cases, man, and they're kind of annoying. They kind of remind me of like Neo Geo cases, if Neo Geo stuff was CD based. There's a foam layer, and then there's a big manual there, and then over here you open it up, and inside there's a single disc. It's very oddly complicated for a disc-based console. Which, I mean, obviously the disc is well protected in there, but I didn't like that. But yeah, then I have The Point of No Return, Team Innocent, Something 2 FX Neo Generation, Something No Something. Obviously, I'll put the titles on the screen here. Return to Zork, which interestingly was made by Activision. An epic adventure in the great underground empire. It's all in English except for the actual game. And then Battle Heat, which got my attention. I was like, oh cool, a fighting game. No. That's the problem with all these games, is that they're all, and this is what James told me, he was like, they're all anime cutscene games. It's kind of like Sega CD FMV games if all of them were in Japanese and you couldn't understand them, on top of them not being good to begin with. Sorry, Sega CD Vampire Mike, sorry. Fuck off. But the thing is, yeah, obviously I don't get much out of games like that. But, you know, it was kind of nice to just kind of build a library, right? So that was all I was going to get. And then James kind of convinced me into doing something. He was like, look, get this game. This is something called, I think it's like Chip Chan Kick. If I get it wrong, I'll put it there. But he said it's a strange game. It's very like hentai, bizarre. But I'll never forget his description. He said, it's not a great game, but it's a game. It's basically a puzzle game. It's like a puzzle platformer. One of the few. The problem with the PCFX is it fell victim to that strange era where people were like, hey look, they can play videos on the consoles now. Let's just make video games. Like literally video games, hence you get all this garbage. So I didn't want to buy this because it went well beyond that $5 limit. But he talked me into it, and honestly, I'm glad he did, because when I got back here and I was testing all this stuff out, this was just like, you know, like horrible. But this was actually something playable, so I actually have something I can use on the console, which is nice. So thank you, James, for forcing me to do that, basically. Then I picked up another Sega Sg-1000 game, which was nice. If you guys didn't see it, in Playload, I was gifted a Sega Sg-1000, Sega's first home console. And since the timing was amazing, I was going to Japan, I was like, sweet, I can look for Sg-1000 games, which aren't very common over there. This store had only one, and I picked it up because it wasn't that much. It was like $9, which for an Sg-1000 game is actually a really good deal. This is Flicky. Flicky used to be one of the big Sega properties. Eventually, Flicky got out of date and was just kind of folded into Sonic continuity and has appeared in a few games since then. I don't expect another Flicky game anytime soon, except maybe on like a mobile platform or something like that. But there you go, Sg-1000 game. Now, this game was one of my high priorities. Like, going over there, I knew I wanted to find this. I just didn't think it would happen. And that is Mushi Mushi Pork and Pink Sweets. Very strange name. It's actually two different games. The one here is Mushi Mushi Pork, and this one, which means, I believe means hello, like you're answering the telephone. I could be wrong, so like hello pork doesn't mean much. And Pink Sweets. If I get the translation wrong, I do apologize. Basically, it's two games on one disc that are shoot-em-ups by a company called Cave. Cave made a lot of shoot-em-ups for the Xbox 360 exclusively, and exclusively in Japan. It's actually very bizarre. This one is notoriously good and is region-free, so it's very sought after by importers. You look online, you'll see Amazon's trying to sell this thing for like $350 US. eBay is a little bit better, but it's still very, very high. And I was like, I'm never paying those kinds of prices. Now, I looked around Den Town, and I saw it a couple of times, but it was always in like the 150 to sometimes the low end was like 120 range. Like, it really, really is an expensive title, and that's usually the regular edition. Now, this store had the regular edition for $100, which I was like, I don't know. I still didn't. I was cheaper, but I still wasn't ready to pull it. Special edition, $80. And that includes like a music CD and stuff. And I was like, $80 is still not chump change, but like, by comparison, an amazing deal. So I was like, fuck, I'm never gonna get it better than that. So $80, there you go, got it. And a couple of, believe it or not, some Dreamcast items. I don't get Dreamcast stuff very often because I have a full set. So it's very rare to find things I actually don't have. And it's usually just like oddball things that I didn't know existed or I just never got around to getting. This one was one I had no idea this existed. So I saw this and I was like, what the fuck is that? Because I could tell instantly it was for the Dreamcast, but I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Now luckily, James is right there, so he's like, I'll read it. And he just looks it over, he's like, it's something called DCX Terminator. It is a cheat disc, it used codes, and I instantly knew what was going on. I was like, oh, it's Japanese Game Shark, that's what it is. So I got super excited because I had no idea there was essentially a Japanese Game Shark or Japanese action replay. And the cool thing about that, first of all, it was just cool to get some Dreamcast related thing I didn't know about, but also, in my experience, I've never found this to not be the case. You can't use you can't use cheat discs with games from other regions. So what I mean by that is, you put in a North American Game Shark into a console. You can use it to boot a Japanese game. It won't have a problem with that. But you put like codes into a North American Dreamcast game for a Japanese game, doesn't matter. They won't work. Whereas this is actually the Japanese disc, so it will be compatible with the Japanese games. Now, granted, I tried. I booted it up, just kind of hoping it was kind of English friendly. It wasn't. It's definitely hardcore Japanese, so it would take me a lot of work to be able to like put titles in and all that stuff. But theoretically, it's possible. So there you go. I could potentially have cheat codes for Japanese games. And the last thing I got, also Dreamcast related, is this. This is the Dream Eye. This might sound familiar, especially if you watched a video I did last month. This is, or maybe it was a month and a half, 2 months ago, whatever it was, on the Divers 2000 Dreamcast, the big blue Dreamcast television thing. Now that thing, as I mentioned in that video, was kind of like a physical edition of Skype. But really what made it like that was this device. This is essentially a webcam that comes with a headset and like software for broadcasting and all that kind of stuff. And eventually they sold this by itself. And I never bothered to get it because I just didn't feel the need to import it, considering I already had one. Granted, I had the Divers 2000 version, but the nice boxed one I never got around to.
It's white, it's a different color and stuff. But this store had it in the box in good condition. $5. $5 fucking for this. That's all it cost. So I was like, done. Not even hesitating, grabbed it. So yeah, that was everything I got at Surugaya Specialty Shop. As you can see, I did okay. But at the same time, you can also see the problem. Like, this was the first store where I kind of unleashed, and look how much, space this would obviously take up. It's a suitcase. You're limited. So it was the same trip where I was hanging out with James. I was like, I'm gonna have to get a second suitcase, and I did. That way I had more room to play later, and I'm really glad I did that. But the problem is really these PCFX cases, man. These take up so much real estate, and it's mostly nothing inside. That's the real killer. But yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, I want to again thank James for helping me out here and taking me here. That was really cool of you to do, especially for that ramen. I will never forget that shit. If you guys are ever in Kyoto, find that ramen place. It's fucking amazing. Although you have to speak Japanese to get into it, I guess. Like, it's the kind of place where they will not attempt to cater to you, the fact that you don't speak English. It's more like just leave. We're not gonna play this game. Since James speaks Japanese, he was just like, I'll order this shit, no problem. You just sit down and eat it, and that was exactly what happened, and it was great. It was amazing. So yeah. Anyway, thank you again, James. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all later.